Yo, John Fitch here. John Fitch knows nothing. I'm here with MMA journalist Shak. Um, you write for Bloody Elbow?
Bloody Elbow and MMA Mania, and
MMA
then
Mania.
outside of MMA, I also write for Entertainment Tonight Canada up
Oh,
here in the
nice.
north.
Okay. So we're live and we're gonna let people get on here. So kill a little bit of time and play a song. So you have to listen to me play a song.
Let's do it.
Ooh. Class it up.
There we
We're
go. You
doing
should
a
have let me
classy
know. I would have
show.
brought. I don't play any instruments, so I would have brought something.
Tambourine.
Tambourine would have been great.
Oh, maybe you can sing. You can sing when we close.
Oh, I cannot sing. You do
Oh.
not want to hear me sing. It's not that I'm a bad singer. I just have no real understanding of tone or anything like musicality. So if you teach me a song, I can sing it. But if I'm freeing it, I'm just going to go completely out of whack.
Yeah, I don't know how to sing either, but I do it anyways.
Yes, my poor girlfriend has to stomach it either way.
Yeah, so this is nice. I'm not used to getting to ask the questions to the MMA journalist.
I know it's a nice reverse order here for me too.
What are your overall opinions of like just the landscape of MMA right now? Like what got you? First of all, I guess we should go start at the beginning. Like what got you into MMA and writing for MMA?
So I've been watching MMA almost religiously since just about when I graduated high school, which, sorry, I'm going to sound like a child here, 2013. And basically what happened is I got into broadcast journalism. So I went to school for that, and I ended up being picked up out of an internship with Entertainment Tonight Canada. You guys have ET in the States. It's just the Canadian version of it up here. And that was going pretty well, but I kind of feel like I got shoehorned a little bit into this online writing position. And there are a lot of barriers in entertainment, as you can imagine. I'm sure, you know, every A, B, C, and D lister has agents, managers, reps, handlers. And so something I'm sure you can relate to, the DIYing it is very hard in entertainment because everyone's very protected. So it's kind of hard as a reporter, as an interviewer, to make strides on your own if you don't have the complete and total backing of an entity that already has those ties.
Yeah,
and so I still work in entertainment full time, but that's when I started exploring MMA because I noticed that, hey, I know this 18-year-old kid in the industry who's got like 8 world champions phone numbers. And I saw kind of, a lesser barrier to entry.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. There was not as much of a barrier of entry for MMA.
It's tightening up, though. It's definitely tightening up.
It is. The athletes are usually a lot more accessible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the athletes, a lot of them have been great. Once they sign on with management that likes to handle all their PR, it gets a little more complicated, but you do what you can. You've been great. You've been super accessible.
Well, I mean, I do it all myself. Yeah. It's when you get to a certain level, they do start controlling who you talk to a little bit more.
Yeah. So
I wonder if there's a reason for that.
Oh man, yeah. It's hard to navigate. You know, it's one of those things where I'm young, I'm new in this, and you hear a lot of things about certain fighters, certain managers, but I like to base my interactions off my interactions. You know, there's a lot of he said, she said, and I'm sure there's truth to lots of it. But if I have my life with predetermined judgments based on other people's experiences, I would hate absolutely everyone. So, take it one step at a time and throw out feelers and just see where you get.
So do you feel that you are pretty free to cover any story or write about anything you want to in the
Bloody Elbow and MMA Mania have been really great. From day one, it's basically been like, if you're passionate about it, do it. No one over here was really doing webcam interviews when I started with them, and once they saw that I had the means to and that I was capable of it, and I didn't absolutely suck at it, they said go for it. So that's been pretty great. But there are consequences to that too with Bloody Elbow in particular. They like to do deep dives into UFC's finances and UFC's political affiliations with Chechen dictators. So
Yeah.
things like that.
You mean news? You mean
News, right?
news,
Yeah.
actual
And
news.
so Bloody Elbow's great, and I love that they do that. Being connected to them has limited my avenues to get interviews, to do coverage. That's where Mania has been great because they're a little more clickbaity, which there's also a space for in the industry, I think. And so, press access, occasional times where I can't get an interview through Bloody Elbow, I've been able to do it through Mania. But you definitely can. It doesn't take a lot of hard work to just look online and see who gets what media gets preferential treatment from the UFC and from managers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever been threatened or received emails from anybody about a story you did, or telling you not to ask certain questions?
So not particularly. There was one instance where when I was originally just with Bloody Elbow, where I had approached a manager about interviewing some clients, and the manager was super sweet, very social. We exchanged stories for a couple of days, and then once I kind of put in my formal request to do an interview, this is one of the managers who doesn't think too highly of Bloody Elbow, and so they started listing conditions for me to interview, including, I want you to ask my clients this, or I want you to ask my clients that. And I respectfully declined, and basically never heard from them again.
It's PR.
Yeah. And this is kind of the thing. It's not. When I approached this particular manager, I expressed, look, Bloody Elbow doesn't ever tell me what to write. If they're curious, if they really have a question they want to ask, they'll pitch it to me. But the questions I ask are my own. They've always been my own. They always will be my own. So for that manager to then turn around and ask me to compromise the principles I've set with the people I work for, I'm not going to then compromise them for someone who I barely know. So that was a roadblock. But again, I don't think that manager has anything against me in particular. And I don't have anything against him in particular for her.
Looking out for the best interest of his athlete.
Yeah, it's the one thing I've learned in my short time in this industry is that there's a lot of great people behind the scenes, but a lot of the characters you see at the front of the public eye, whether that's fighters, managers, executives, they often have their own best interest first and foremost. Let's take into example. Like, I have a great relationship with the UFC. The UFC has been nothing but kind to me, especially when I go and do work for Mania. But the fact that they've been trying to shoehorn these events in light of every other major sport, major festival, major event getting canceled, I think is ridiculous. And
it is ridiculous.
The fighters aren't going to benefit from this in the long term. They're going to get sick. They're probably not going to get paid. And that's the UFC having the UFC's best interest in mind. And I think that's pretty
sick,
common.
They'll have their contracts extended.
Yeah.
So that's a good point with the quarantine and them pushing through. I mean, they must be hard up for cash to just trying to force the events to happen. Like that was eerie, the event in Brazil. I mean, I don't think there's that much of a risk. I'm not a doctor, but it seems from reports that, healthy people aren't really that big of a risk. They're mostly just carriers, and the sick and the weak are the ones that are.
Oh, I'm hoping I didn't disconnect because I can't hear you right now, John. Let me. No, my connection is still okay.
What is going on here?
Ah, there we are.
Yeah, what was that about?
I have no idea. At first, my internet's been kind of wonky lately, so I was afraid it was me.
See, that's what scared me about this thing too. Well, I was just saying that it was really stupid of them to be pushing the events through, the UFC pushing these events through. It shows the control that they have, because not only can they just not even take the fighters into consideration and ask them whether or not they want to take the risk. The fighters are brainwashed into thinking that, yeah, I want to go and fight. It's what I do. And no, like you're conditioned because like your entire livelihood is dependent on you fighting.
Right.
Like your
Yeah.
entire existence, who you are, your clout, like your day-to-day life, everything revolves around you being a fighter. I know, I was there. Like I had that same mentality, but now that I have some space and some time that I've been around, I've seen how we get manipulated and exploited. Like, no, that's a dumb risk. Like, with regardless of the sickness or possibility of getting sick, you could have riots, you could have food shortages, you could get locked down and quarantined in a foreign country away from your family. Like, it's not worth the risk.
It's don't bite the hand that feeds you, right? And unfortunately, fighters are in a position where they're, like you said, their entire livelihood is dependent on the UFC, and so they don't really have the choice to say it's either the UFC or my family, because one is now kind of intrinsically tied to the other.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that you're probably going to hear me say a lot of things that Luke Thomas says, because I spend way too much time listening to the man. But this all comes back to, guys, you should have formed some kind of organizing body when there were options.
Mm-hmm.
That I know there's still stuff going on behind the scenes, but there was more than one initiative. You were involved in one.
Support the Ali Act. Support the Ali Act. We get the 4 points.
But there was a time where it was it was such a hot topic, and so many people were aware of it, and you had media talking about it, and fans talking about it, and there was a time to strike while the iron was hot. And now, it's the slow trudge that I'm hoping will eventually.
Well, I mean, I think that one of the reasons that it isn't as in the news now is because most of the journalists don't cover it.
Yeah,
it's not an accepted topic to be talked about.
Well, let me ask then, as someone who's maybe misinformed on the matter, how often is there significant updates to the progress? Because that's one of the things, right? It's like at some point, if there's nothing significantly new to present, we kind of have to wait for that.
Well, that's like saying you're on a ship and it's got a big hole and you're taking on water and you're like, well, there's no updates. The hole hasn't changed size. I mean, it's a big, huge problem. Guys are getting ripped off. I think every event they do, they need to talk about the money. Every event, I think, is notable time to be able to really dive into it and have articles. And there should be a couple in the chamber. We had notably the largest event in MMA history was the evidentiary hearings in Vegas last August, and we had 4 people show up to cover it.
Wow. Now, I can say
that was hands down the biggest event, because what's going on with that court case is will change how everything is done. The last 5 years of this lawsuit have changed the way the business does way they do business a little bit.
I could say, as someone who does not cover the finances of the sport at all, I can say there's a team over at Bloody Elbow, including John Nash, who did a really good job of scraping through all the legal documents and exposing, what sort of bonuses people were being paid, what is the discrepancy between fighters at the top of the card, bottom. But you're right, there's not enough media that focuses on that, because a lot of MMA media is a PR machine for the
It's just,
UFC. Now,
it's a sales.
it may be intentional. I think in some cases it's just a matter of what draws traffic, and that gets kind of hard for media too in their defense. I would say if you're out there and
that's
you
true.
are regularly involved in pushing the Ali Act or anything that is meant to benefit fighters and fighter rights, the best thing you can do, and this is whoever's listening, the best thing you can do, and this is something I do with all my exclusives, is throw up a press release. Because if I can see very concisely what is new, what is the important information, if I don't have to scrape through 200 pages of a document or 2 hours of a podcast, I can promise you it's much more likely to get picked up. So there's just a little bit of advice from my end, whoever's out there.
No, that's good. Yeah, it's frustrating because
it's super frustrating.
I read through Nash's stuff, and he talked about some of the deals that were being made around their contracts, and it was like tickets for seats to the event. It was petty. It was like petty things. So I'm gonna get a nice car. I'm gonna get this car for my fight. When they're fooled into thinking that they're actually negotiating something. It's like I'm negotiating with my kid, like which piece of candy you want, when he should be asking for the whole bag. When they should be negotiating percentages and guaranteed money. They're talking about, oh, well, I want extra tickets. I want this colored car. That was a big disagreement we had with like Leslie Smith was, they wanted health care. And I was like, I don't want them to provide health care for me. I want them to pay me my market value. So I have enough money to get whatever health care I want. I don't want anything for them. I don't want them to be in control of that. So that was a big disagreement we had.
Yeah. Well, I get your point, which is whatever additional incentives a company offers you, what it often does is lower the price that they'd be willing to pay you, right? It often isn't a one for one. The extra healthcare is usually not worth the flat money they could pay you on top.
Yeah. And it's I don't know, it's just ugly. It's just ugly. That I can't believe that people haven't really picked up and figure this out yet as fighters. It's really disappointing. And I think I understand why it's happened though, because it's no longer operationally a sport. The events are just exhibitions. The fights are exhibitions. There's no meritocracy. There's no climbing a ladder. It's all just made up. It's a show. It's a television show. They just award who they want through popularity, just like with pro wrestling. It's like if WWE gave rankings out, it would be the exact same thing.
Yeah, I'm fully aware. They have actually started, and this was something I like to talk about a lot, which is there's this great Reddit post, and I can't remember the name of the user, but he went through all the media members, quote unquote, that contribute to these rankings, and like more than half of them don't cover MMA. Like their websites have nothing to do with MMA. Some of them don't even like work in the industry anymore in any sort of media, and they still would contribute to these rankings. I heard low key that they've recently invited a handful of new media members who actively cover the sport. So we'll see if there are improvements. But irregardless, right? It's a system that is organized to some degree by the promotion that benefits most from it.
Yeah, the person who they make the most money off of is going to get the opportunities, not the person who's the best.
Yeah.
They've changed the definition of best. It's not the best fighter. It's the best asset, best money getter.
Yeah. And, I think to some degree, this is something that that people need to expect and learn to accept when it comes to prize fighting, is there's always going to be a degree of entertainment value. It's just, when two sports leagues, when two NFL teams compete, I'm not much of an NFL fan, but I would imagine that most of the teams don't have name value that's going to drive in more traffic for a particular game from people who don't watch much football. That's why you have something like the Super Bowl, where they've branded an event to draw people as opposed to banking on the individual teams. In MMA,
that's what all championships are for. That's what I was saying. That's what all championships are for.
I think when this business requires star power, and I think sometimes that's going to have to take center stage, which comes back to my main issue, which is not necessarily the matchmaking or the rankings. It's these fighters should all be in a position to get paid. It shouldn't have to come to the politics of the rankings or the matchmaking for people who put in incredible amounts of work and put their lives at risk to get paid what they're all worth. Like, the minimum pay of these fighters should all be exponentially higher than what they are right now. No one should be getting 5 and 5 or 10 and 10 or 20.
Well,
20,
I mean, I'll push back on that a little bit.
Low.
Not everybody's the same. Some fighters are better than others. Some fighters do have more notoriety than others. So not everybody's going to get paid the same. Some people might, and that's one of the arguments too. Some of the people like entry level fighters in the UFC would actually be probably making less money.
Yeah,
because you haven't earned it. You have to work your way up. But that's the thing though, is in my opinion, like, fights become exciting and fighters become exciting because of their body of work. So like, if this person keeps winning and keeps beating top people, to me, this guy becomes more exciting, regardless of fight style, whatever. Floyd Mayweather, I think he's super boring. He's a master. Like,
absolute.
I'll still tune in and I'll pay the $60 or $50 to watch him fight because he's that good. And I would love to be there when he lost, so like, I don't know. I just have a little different opinion than some people on what sells, what exciting is, or how they get exciting. I don't think people just fall out of trees and are exciting. I think it should be built up from.
I get where you're coming from, and you're right. A dominant champion, someone who's winning constantly, is someone who excites me too. But the business model upon which the UFC is built, let's take PFL as an example of a promotion who does a really good job of awarding fighters based on meritocracy. Their ceiling for profit, I think, will always be lower than the UFC's. Let's ignore any additional factors like size, growth, available resources, just because when you're only drawing in the purists, you're leaving out a huge market, right, for casual fans. I like the pageantry. I think there's a place for it. I think whether or not you're excited by an all-action fighter with a shoddy win-loss record or someone who is the absolute best of the best, regardless of if it goes to a decision, I think that's a matter of taste. And I think there are leagues that cater to, like you said, a more purist approach.
There are no leagues in MMA.
Sorry?
There are no leagues in MMA.
Yeah, well, what do you think about PFL, out of curiosity?
It's a promotion. It just has a different business model for the belts. I think that it sounds nice that these guys are winning $1 million. And I think it's really good for up and comers who nobody knows who they are. It's a great chance to build notoriety. But I think when you get to Lance Palmer's level, Lance Palmer should be making millions of dollars per fight.
Yeah,
in an open free market. There's a glass ceiling on their system. Just like with the UFC purposely set their event pay to the athletes 19%, right? They constructed that purposefully. It's the same thing with the PFL. Like, they know exactly how much they're going to pay every year. It's just it's a business model that they can sell. They can get the ad money for having live events where people will sit through the commercials. But those fighters, I mean, they're capped. They've got a glass ceiling. They're earning way less than they should be.
So I think this is somewhere where we agree. If your argument is that there should be an open free market where fighters can regularly negotiate between different promotions, I'm completely on board with that. Because that allows fighters to leverage their value in different ways. If you're charismatic, you can leverage that. If you're, like, let's say Khabib, for example, yes, a big part of it is he comes from a part of the world where he's got a huge population of supporters. I wouldn't say his fighting is the most exciting, but he's among the best of the best. And even all UFC fighters are being paid way too little, but compared to a lot of his peers, he's making what he's quote unquote worth. So if your solution is an open market where fighters can negotiate between promotions, I'm all for it. I think every fighter should be able to leverage.
And I think Khabib and Conor are getting robbed blind. The fighters on the absolute top are the ones being robbed the most.
Yeah, for sure.
But you can't tell me if this was boxing, right?
Oh, Conor would be making tens and tens of millions.
After he won the first title, he could have started his own promotion and hosted events in Ireland.
Yep.
And he would still get to fight the number one contenders from the other promotions. That dude would be making $40 to $100 million a fight.
Yeah. Well, the UFC has done a
he's
phenomenal
getting on both
job.
knees for Dana still.
Yeah. And on the UFC, to their credit, I guess, has done a phenomenal job of they have insurance at every stage. They have a long-term deal with ESPN. Yeah. They got flat rates per pay-per-view. They don't need star power anywhere. Obviously, they would like to
crank out cheeseburgers, just
100%.
McDonald's. That's all it is, fast food.
Not to say that they're purposely putting out weak cards because they still have an obligation to draw, but they are under no pressure. Conor McGregor got as close as anyone ever will to getting a slice of the UFC.
Well, that's why they seized, everything up and tightened that up, and they never. If somebody has a little wiggle room, they'll make sure it never happens again.
Yeah, listen. I don't think I could be a UFC fighter for the sole reason that I don't think I could be content with myself being so heavily pressed under the thumb of any one entity. I accept there are limitations to what everyone can do, but man, those poor guys get squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. And again, this isn't me trying to throw shade. The UFC has been wonderful to me. I've really enjoyed my time working with them, but I try my best to call it how I see it with my limited scope of a 24-year-old's perspective. And these fighters go through a lot and they get scraps. I don't think you can argue that.
And when you the worst part for me is when you see people who start aging in the sport and you start seeing the toll that the 10, 15, 20 years of training and fighting has done to them. And they have nothing really to show for it except for some scars and a limp.
Yeah, it's rough. And this is why, for me, I would love to be more of a champion in media for fighters, but I can't do something that I hate all the time, and I have very little interest in finances. I have very little interest in politics. And so for me, for what, grains of salt it helps, my interview style has always been focused on marketing the fighters. Instead of being a PR machine for the UFC, I try where I can to be a PR machine for the fighters and tell interesting stories about them and help their personality shine through. That's what the fighters are going to have to do now.
Sorry? That's what the fighters have to do now.
They have to do.
Because promoters aren't going to do it. The promoters expect you to have promoted yourself. In order to get into some promotions and get signed, you have to have certain follower counts.
Yeah.
You have to have some level of clout before they'll even sign you. Well, like in boxing, they'll find somebody who's skilled, put money and invest time into him, put him in an apartment, feed him, train him. They'll build his clout up. They'll help with the PR. They'll actually promote him.
Yeah.
And then when he becomes a champion, they'll make their money back.
Exactly.
But that doesn't happen with what we have.
And while we're on the subject, because this is something that I think I put a poll out or someone put a poll out, and it was kind of like, so the backstory to this is UFC Vancouver, myself and a bunch of media were there, and Todd Duffy came up, and Todd just started laying into us about media malpractice and how we're always rooting against the fighter and this and that. And we asked him, we were genuinely curious because as far as I can tell, everyone in the room is firmly on the fighter side. I want what's best for the fighters. I can tell you a lot of media wants what's best for the fighters. Does that mean they are actively campaigning for it or championing it for it? Not necessarily. Some do. Luke Thomas, I think, does a good job when he can. John Nash does a good job when he can. There are people out there. But we don't want the fighters to fail, right? Like, I am more vested in the careers of these fighters than I am in the UFC as a promotion. But what I think sometimes happens is, and this isn't black or white, there's obviously gonna be a lot of gray, but I put out a poll, and when asked like who is most responsible for sort of or who's the hardest on fighters, most people said it was the media. Between UFC fans and the media, most people voted for the media, and I think that is wrong, and I'll tell you why. I wrote a story once about Curtis Millender, about how he wants to give back to his community the same way rapper Nipsey Hussle did shortly after his death. That thing got 300 clicks. Whereas, some nonsense about Colby Covington got like 20, 30,000.
Yeah.
And what happens, and this is what I hope fighters understand,
people love
fans
shit.
Understand, is there are a lot of media out there who are trying to tell stories about fighters, who are trying to talk about fighters' rights. But what you see on Twitter is what the masses are sharing. And unfortunately for us, what the masses are sharing is a load of BS. And I need to write some BS as well as write some important stuff, because we do depend on web traffic to sustain the business.
The fans
model.
Generally don't care. Like
people don't care. It's like they throw it on the media at all times. I'm like, what you guys are seeing are what you guys are sharing and drawing traffic to. It's not us. We put out all sorts of content.
That was one of the early things that we were taught with the Fighters Association stuff. Is we went to an NFL Players Association meeting, and they gave a little talk, and they explained to some of the new guys there that the fans will never be on your side when it comes to a financial disagreement with the owners. The fans historically have never sided with the athletes in any disagreement between athletes and owners ever in any sport. With hockey, baseball, football, it's always the fans are pissed off at the athletes.
Yeah.
And it's always the same sentiment. It's always, you jerk offs, you make all this money already from playing a game. What are you complaining about? Like they automatically, for some reason, they side with the tyrant. They think that the owner is the nice guy.
Yeah. It drives me nuts. Like if you were just to take a step at this and think about it logically, like, John, you've been great to me. There's a lot of fighters who've been really great to me. I try my best to keep biases out of it, but to some degree, you form relationships as media with these fighters and vice versa. I don't know Dana White. I don't know Dana White anything. Why do you think that my motives are in favor of Dana White? Now, let's be clear. There are definitely media people inside ESPN and out who toe the company line for perks, for access to fighters, for exclusives with the UFC president. Those guys exist. But a lot of us, there's so many people in MMA media. You guys see like 6 of them. You see Ariel, you see Luke, you see Brett Okamoto. If you're in Canada, you see Aaron Bronstetter. You see Mike Bond and who's totally drunk. I'm sorry, I've been up since 6 a.m.
No,
I'm thinking about the guy. I'm not gonna say, he's gonna kill me. You see 6 faces. I don't know the good eggs and the bad eggs. I don't know any of them that well, but those are all you see. There's so many of us, in the basement, digging, doing stories, talking to fighters, because we care about them. We really want what's best. Does that mean we're out there swords and shields? Not always. But this idea that everyone in the media is this UFC PR machine and they don't care about the fighters, I think is nonsense. Those stories are perpetuated because that's what people are clicking on and that's what they're sharing.
Yeah, I can see that. I feel that I don't have any instances to think of that come to mind, but I feel like sometimes, there are people who just kind of look the other way when something effed up happens on the UFC's side of things. I think there's a lot of people just not commenting on things they could comment on. They just go to the next thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's a very PR atmosphere.
It is. And part of the problem there is this really low barrier to entry in MMA, where it benefited me because it gave me access early on, and I was able to build some relationships, and I got big platforms to do my work. But a downside is, and I was actually talking to Andrea Lee about this the other day. She was sharing with me a story about, I won't go into details because she asked me not to, but she was telling me about a really insensitive, inappropriate question that was asked to someone close to her. And I explained to him, like, the issue is you require no education to get into MMA media. So sometimes you get people with passion and common sense, but sometimes you got a whole lot of idiots. You got a whole lot of dumb people who have no ethics, no principles, to some degree, you know, morally their own fault. In other senses, they just never learn these things. Like, they don't know that you shouldn't send your article to the manager to vet before you publish it. Like, that's a no-go. There's these really common principles that you should know, and if you don't know, you should learn. And because there's no real, you don't really have anyone checking you at the door, you just got a whole lot of dumb people in MMA media. So sorry to those of you who've had to experience it.
You want to make some money? Put together an online course, intro to MMA journalism course.
Hey man, I'm all for it.
$500. There you go.
What's your cut for commission?
I'll take 20%.
20%. That's fair. No complaints from me. Take 25. You're the fighter.
All right. That's good. So have you I know of times way in the past when Joe Silva had sent out emails telling fighters not to talk to certain press groups. Like, don't talk to these people. They're not on our side.
What I can say, so I'm sorry if I'm cutting you off. On my end, your connection's cutting in and out a little bit, so I definitely don't mean to. I haven't experienced it myself. I've noticed, and I've been told that the UFC over the last year or two has made real great efforts to rebuild good relationships with media, which I think is great because we need that access. It lets us do our work, and they don't seem to be holding grudges the way they used to in the past, perhaps. Well, but I've only been in it for a couple of years. I can't speak entirely to it, but listen, I'll tell you point blank, bloody elbow, can't go. Like, UFC told me, hey, Shak, we like you. We'd love to have you involved and be at the events and stuff, but we can't credential you through bloody elbow. So there are definitely outlets that are still banned, but I haven't experienced any personal retaliation from the UFC. So fingers crossed for that.
No. Well, they might put a softer edge on things now because it's WME running things.
Yeah, I hope so. And that's the thing, right? Like, I think, fighters are guilty of it. We all are. The UFC is definitely guilty of it. Is sometimes people are too sensitive. Like, I can try my best to make an objective statement without intending you harm.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's law. Man, it is definitely lost on a portion of the MMA community. I put out this.
Just people in general today. People are really quick to being offended.
Well, and I think there's this intrinsic side effect of communicating over the internet or over text or whatever, which is like when you don't hear yourself. Like, when you talk, you hear yourself saying stupid stuff. I don't think it comes across quite the same way when you are texting and you're basically having a conversation with yourself. You're misreading what other people are saying. You're reinforcing your own ideas. It's super sick. We're doing this great video called B4s documenting Khabib versus Tony, the build up here, where it's going. And in an effort, I'm Iranian, my family is, I was born in Canada, but in an effort to respect Khabib's culture, I watched a video of him pronouncing his name like 80 times. And to the best of my abilities, it's not Khabib Nurmagomedov, it's Khabib Nurmagomedov. And I knew immediately when I post this video, the trolls are going to come out of their sewers and their caves and wherever else the hell they live. But I was ready to be told I was wrong. I was ready to be told that I'm dumb. But some of the thing, there's this one guy who said, you must be biased by the way you're purposely butchering Khabib's name. And I'm like, how did you get there? Like, there were so many more reasonable conclusions you could have jumped to. I was misinformed. I I've got some sort of maybe I'm dyslexic and I misread it. I don't know, but like the fact that you jumped all the way to like racial biases.
When the sport has been collectively turned into professional wrestling,
yeah,
then I mean, like everything's pro wrestling.
I
You're
love pro
you're
wrestling,
Mean
but
Gene. You're a part of it. You can't just be given a straight down the middle opinion of both sides of the facts. You have to be playing some kind of role in the act.
John, while you're crapping on pro wrestling, let me just point to my WWE Undisputed Championship belt over there in the corner. Thank you very much.
Hey, people can watch pro wrestling. Pro wrestling's fine, but
it's not MMA.
It's not MMA, and MMA shouldn't be. And I don't like it becoming, or it kind of is. It is kind of MMA now, or it kind of is pro wrestling now, and that's, I don't know. It's a shame. I thought I saw the sport going a completely different direction. Mm-hmm. This was not what I thought things were going to look like at all. But
here we are.
Here we are. I still like watching the fights, and I'm trying to figure out a way how to be involved in the sport I love, that I know is so. It's a game of pimps and hoes, and to make money in this thing, not fighting, like you're kind of one of the pimps.
Yeah. No, it's true, and I don't know. Like, we need the Ali Act. We need something, because I've lost confidence that the sport of MMA, like you said, these promotions have a cap, right? They know how much they're going to pay you. They keep it at certain margins that benefit them, and it forces these fighters to compromise on their ethics and their principles, because they got to make money and they got to feed their family. And
just like the girls who got naked for Harvey Weinstein to get a lead role in a movie.
Yeah. At some point, I really wish that more of these top level fighters who are making good money could say, you know what? Again, it's hard. Like you said, it's hard for them because they're not getting paid nearly what they're worth either, but they never will be. And you would hope at some point that some high profile names could really champion this again. There was a moment where you had like George St. Pierre and Donald Cerrone and everyone coming together, but that fizzled out real quick. It'd be nice to get someone with name value and someone who draws to do what's right. And
Connor had the ability to really shake things up and change things, but he ended up bending a knee.
Yeah,
gave him a huge cut of the boxing match with Floyd, and then, I mean, man, he could have walked, he could have figured something out, and broke the sport apart and made it better.
Yeah, it's, man, I don't know. Maybe it's an individual sport and people have individual motivations. I don't know what it is.
Well, that's the thing, though, is that.
But you build a lot of camaraderie in the training room.
To me, they're kind of brainwashed. It's like Stockholm syndrome. Right? A lot of these people can't envision a world where UFC wasn't the dominant market, and it didn't control everything. A lot of people think that without UFC there is no MMA. Like, everything will fall apart. Like, they've been brainwashed into thinking that boxing is dead just because they're not a boxing fan, not realizing that boxing makes more money, it has more viewership, it's growing larger, and the boxers are better treated and make more money throughout their entire career. It still has its problems. It still has a lot of issues, but it's better. And fighters still don't see that. And I don't know. I think until people can actually see the difference in treatment and how things are going. I mean, how many boxing promoters were trying to relocate and continue their boxing matches?
Yeah.
Did you hear of any? None, because they followed suit with the rest of the professional sports, because those boxers actually have leverage. They're not slaves and forced into fighting when they don't want to.
Yeah, I only saw a couple headlines, but it did seem that boxing promotions have, prior to the UFC, had agreed to cut back on events or postpone events or whatever. Maybe quick shout out to Bellator, because they paid all their fighters in full for 241, which
it's great.
That's how it should be. It's just, the greed really gets to me a little bit. I don't know. I think maybe
They
it a
got
little bit
they
has
got
to
a
do.
big debt. They got a big debt to pay off.
Man, it's wild. And like working in
And
entertainment,
they're gonna lose a lawsuit.
yeah, working in entertainment, like I spend so much time writing about people who have exorbitant amounts of wealth and are doing crazy stuff, and it's only it's actually made me crave that sort of wealth less, because I feel like there's a degree of humanity that is lost when the money has such a major influence in your life. Like I love that the people I'm around are just happy to come over and play some board games. You know, like I was around this dude. He's like, "Yo, I got 10 Coachella tickets. Who wants them?" He was never gonna give them to any of these people. I'm just like, that's so strange to me. It's all.
Yeah. No, I mean, I like playing board games too, but I wouldn't mind doing it on my yacht.
Facts. Yeah. Well, listen,
Because then I'm quarantined too. If I would have had a yacht already, I'd be quarantined.
True. It's like basically the plot of not The Walking Dead, but the spinoff they did. I can't remember what it's called. Fear of the Walking Dead. That's the one.
Yeah. So I mean, no, I mean I know what you mean. Like to have the money, I think it would be nice. It's fine. It's fine.
Well, because you deserve the money. That's also the thing.
But
right?
it's when you get to the level that you will just crush other people, just to have control to make more money. I mean, there's been a number of people I've talked to how they were working on deals or they're working on something outside of the UFC, and when the UFC found out about it, they crushed it and took it from them.
Yeah,
I went down and did some stuff for a documentary they're working on. Bobby Ryzik is directing a movie about UFC finance and stuff like that. And Jeff, the guy put it together, used to represent Brandon Vera and Brown, those guys down in San Diego. Like he's the one who put together the whole trading card thing. And when he spent a year and a bunch of money locking down people's signatures and getting all this stuff lined up, and package that he put together was probably worth millions of dollars, and the UFC made him give it up. Just hand it over.
It's, if there's I feel like I shouldn't even be imparting any wisdom really, but if there's one thing I think I've picked up on in my 24 years on this earth is, man, like especially these fighters, you guys have so much determination, like the amount of willpower and like willingness to push through for your dreams, whatever they may be. It's so strong. I wish more fighters were prepared to pivot and have an exit plan, because I feel like a lot of them are, this is the only way. They think this is the only way out for them, and that's so like my work. I'm kind of happy that the stuff that I like to talk about doesn't step on toes. It's kind of plays to my benefit. But I come on your show and you ask me, and I'm going to try and give you as straight of an answer as possible. So if I get blackballed for whatever reason and this doesn't work out for me, this is the dream job. There's other stuff I'm good at. There's other stuff I know I could do, right? And I wish more fighters were prepared to say, you know what? If you can make it to the UFC, man, you can do anything you want. Maybe you're not going to be an astrophysicist, I don't know, but you can start a business. You can.
Yeah,
I have a lot of respect for fighters, and I think
you have a discipline to get there. You probably be able to discipline yourself
whatever they want.
Something else.
Yeah, so.
But no, there is a lot of that feeling. That's a lot of reason why I don't think anything changes or fighters don't step up to make changes is because I've been there where you think, oh, I just have to win a few more fights. I just have to get that title. I just have to get to this place. If I get here, then I'll be able to do this. And like that spot never really comes, or you get there and then you push it a little bit further, and then it could be too late before you realize that, oh shit, like it's I'm not going to get to that point where I'm making millions.
Yeah. Well, it's designed that way too, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah,
it's been bottomed out. So
they it's designed to keep you poor so that they can force you to sign bad contracts and fights you don't want, fight against guys you don't want to at times you don't want to. Like they talk about that. It's one of their strategies is to keep you a little bit hungry.
Yeah, like, people say don't ever work for free. I think there are times where opportunities are more valuable than monetary, but that's like a couple hours of my time or a couple of days of my time. Like when fighters are fighting maybe twice a year, that's too much of your life, man. That's too much of your life waiting for opportunities that are probably never going to come your way by design.
Yeah.
John, after 8 hours of writing about the coronavirus, I was looking forward to an upbeat interview, but we're talking some serious topics here.
Well, I mean, so yeah, coronavirus. What's the man? Is it gonna blow over in a few weeks, you think, or are we fucked? Is this the apocalypse?
This is, I'm not gonna.
It's because it's really a heavy thing. It's not.
Yeah, I think
like
someone
people could start like dying or rioting tomorrow.
Well, someone made a really interesting observation online, which is, it's like the spread is so quick, but the mortality rate is pretty low, and so there's this. I think everyone. First of all, we're all trying to adjust. Like this is so new for everyone. People are losing their jobs. People are staying home. Like it's a lot.
I'm kind of doing the same thing I've been doing every day for the last year.
I know. So have I. I'm like the original self.
I got a gym in my garage. I got Matt's heavy bag. I've got my studio here.
Yeah.
Like I'm always at home reading.
I know. I was well prepared for this, and unfortunately, media only benefits, at least for the time being, when there's a pandemic or a paranoia. Someone put it really well online, which was, at one moment I feel like I'm overreacting, and at the next I feel like I'm underreacting, and sometimes it's both. At one moment you're like, holy crap, the world's come to a standstill. The other second you're like, hey, you know what? I already work from home. I got my gym at home. It's no biggie. I know we went into lockdown in Canada a couple days ago. Mm-hmm. I could be wrong. I heard this through a friend who was watching the report, but apparently it's till June.
Yeah, wow.
So,
oh man,
yeah,
I'm hearing rumors of the National Guard popping up and locking everybody down.
Man, I hope not.
I play custody with my kids, so like if we're not allowed to leave at all, I don't know how that's gonna work. Hopefully I got the kids with me because I'd rather have them with me because I've got guns and food and.
Yeah, you would hope, and to all the dumb spring breakers out there, please do your part to curb this so that we don't need to. Like, I don't ever want to be under.
The thing is, though, like I don't know, can it even be curbed? Are they just making a bunch of precautions and nothing's going to be able to do anything? Because it's a strand of the flu. We don't have a cure for the flu, so it's just going to mutate and come back next year.
Yeah.
It's going to get stronger. Is it like?
I'm hoping if you look at, they said in China today was the first day that they did not record a new case of it. I don't
trust China at all.
Well, China. I think what we're hoping, what we're seeing governments do here in North America are see what happened in China, take similar measures. And I think at that point, it's the thing. I think people are too up in arms one way or the other. No one knows what this is, really. No one knows what the effects are going to be. We elect politicians to, they might all be equally shitty, but we elect them to make decisions in times like this. And so I think the best you can do is play your part, do what you can to distance and isolate and see what happens before jumping to a conclusion that, oh, this is overblown or this is underblown or this is a political agenda for the election. Like, here's where we are. Nothing ever gets solved when everyone's divisive on the topic.
Well, one of my big fears too is this is the NWO takeover, and the National Guard's coming, and they're sending us to FEMA camps. They're gonna go. We're gonna hear announcements. They're going door to door, and check everybody for the virus. And then while they start that, the internet's gonna shut off, so nobody can communicate and talk about how they're actually coming through and raiding your house.
John, don't put this out there, man. You don't will this into existence.
Not willing it. I mean, it's an environment I might thrive in, but
I know I think everyone's processing the situation differently. What I will say is, I think unity is important, and we need to try something and see what happens before we jump to conclusions. Because I was at a music festival with some friends, and obviously, everyone had been drinking, and people were like, "Oh, I can't find you in the crowd. Where are you?" And I spent a good hour running around and grabbing one friend and placing him here and grabbing another, and then that one would split off, and it was chaos. And I thought to myself, man, if I can't keep 6 drunk people in one place, how the hell does anyone run a country?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I said, it feels a little bittersweet because I'm busier than ever. For the time being, my line of work is very secure because people want information and need information. But I've had so many friends laid off already, and it's feeling a little more real every day. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, the economic fall is what's probably really going to be the big impact from everything.
Yeah, I don't know about the States. Canada's announced a stimulus package that they're hoping to roll out by.
I mean, like, what's
Tuesday the latest?
But... little, too late. Like, they're talking about $1,000 for people who earned less than $100,000 last year. Yeah. That's nothing. That's not going to help that many people out. It doesn't help me out. Like mortgage relief or something like that. They just need to postpone payments on everything.
So I heard that, and
for a few months. I mean,
please fact check because I'm talking off of headlines and short excerpts. But at least up here in Canada, a number of banks have agreed to postpone mortgage payments for 6 months. And I think the federal income tax is being pushed back at the moment from April to September. So
yeah, because that's the other thing is taxes are due. Like, I'm supposed to be like finishing up my tax shit.
Me too.
Like, yeah. What's the point? We're all dead.
So I heard that it's being pushed back to September, at least up here in Canada. So
okay. Well, hopefully something will be settled with that too, because it's just a lot of people are just kind of effed. But like, I don't know if I trust them. Last economic crisis, they bailed out the banks and they foreclosed houses on a bunch of people.
Facts.
So
facts. This is where I'm still.
The other conspiracy theory is that it's a designed transfer of wealth from the middle class to the rich and the super poor.
Well, here's where I'm the plucky newborn in all this, right? This is like my first major global catastrophe, and so
first global event, rookie.
Yeah, so us millennials are just, I think, for the most part, just keeping an open mind and hoping this all that we're doing what we can.
Yeah,
it's interesting for sure.
What's that? That Chinese proverb? May you live in interesting times.
Mm-hmm. Have you watched Contagion? It's blowing up on Netflix right now.
I have not, but my one of my podcasting partners, Chris Tinkle, watched it. And he was telling me all about it.
Yeah, yes. One of my friends watched. He's like, I shouldn't have done it. I'm terrified now. Others, that was fine. Funny enough, you learn the source of it at the end of the movie. I won't give any spoilers, but it's not too far off from how this supposedly started. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we've humans have been through this before. We've had the Black Plague, Spanish flu, swine flu, SARS.
Yeah.
There was
this sort of response in the modern age is pretty unprecedented, huh?
Yeah. I mean, like, man, I hate to be too much of a realist, but we have 7.5 billion people in the world, and like how many billions came after the Industrial Revolution? Like, there's a chart where it's like billions of people to billions, like in a very short period of time. Like, when you look at biology, like, it would say that maybe something's going to wipe a lot of them out.
Hey, man, we are definitely overpopulated. I think that's not something.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I don't think we're overpopulated. I think we're overcondensed.
Overcondensed is probably a good word. Yeah.
Yeah. If we were more spaced out, there's plenty of room on planet Earth. If we were spaced out more, yeah. But like, we have such big pockets of people all coughing on each other and touching stuff that it's just going to breed something. If we had a lot more space, it would be we'd be better off. And that's really what we should be focusing on: is small municipalities, have small townships, try to limit cities and stuff to 200,000 and have farms. And
Vancouver's blowing up, man. It's getting tougher and tougher out here.
Yeah, it's just the urban sprawl is just unhealthy.
John, any other? I'm still good to talk, but just out of curiosity, any other media-related questions you're dying to ask? Because I'm enjoying trying to stumble through this without ruining my own career.
No, I mean I think that's pretty good. I've always had a suspicion that there are a lot of the main journalists are actually just attack dogs for the company. When they want to shine a bad light on somebody, they send certain journalists.
Yeah, let me look. I to wrap it up. Just from what I know, and what I have hunches of, there are outlets. I mean, let's just put ESPN there really quickly. ESPN is a marketing machine for the UFC because they're partners.
Yep.
You're not going to get good investigative journalism from ESPN. In fact, Luke Thomas mentioned on his live chat yesterday that he knows of certain op-eds that were canned by the UFC that were supposed to go out. So that's just a fact. If you ever wonder why certain reporters seem to get all the breaking scoops on matchmaking and stuff, it's very obvious. They either got a relationship with the UFC or they've got a relationship with management.
On the head. It's a pat on the head. They've done a good job. They get rewarded.
Yeah. So this is not, I wish there was more of a code of conduct to this, but the reality is UFC is a private entity. UFC has such a grasp on the sport that the cards are in their hands with fighters, with media. If they don't want you at an event, you're not going to be at an event. From my experiences, just being new to this, they've been very open and understanding with me. My impression is that they're trying to be less tyrannical, at least on the media side. Don't know if that's true. That's just my hunch. But the UFC holds all the cards. Where my career, someone from the team sees this episode and they didn't like it, I'm done. So it's entirely likely. So just keep in mind, folks who like to trash on fighters and trash the media, there's one really big player here and a bunch of other people who are under the thumb or doing their best to be around it. Or, oftentimes like this is also a thing where a lot of fighters think the UFC has a personal vendetta against them. They don't. You're a statistic.
They just don't care about you.
Yeah. That's the thing. So, a lot of times if you see media tiptoe, it's possible that they've got a relationship with managers, the promotion, but it's also possible that they just don't want to jeopardize their own career, which I think you can blame them for, but you should be understanding of it at the very least.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's what the job entails is that they want you to tell the positive stuff. Yes. To pitch the fight, but then they'll turn some people into attack dogs when it's time.
Yeah. There's media members that are defiant. There is media members that are compliant, and there are those who are compliant but wish they could be defiant. It's a whole spectrum, and really, I think in a lot of ways, the media members can relate to some of the troubles that the UFC fighters have. Obviously, we're not out there putting our bodies on the line, so.
Yeah, I was something I think a lot of the fighters thinking that the company has a vendetta against you when really it's just
no.
You don't fit a role in the story they want to tell. You're basically your character in a story that they don't want to use. Like, we're writing that character out. It's nothing personal, but it's just it kind of is though, because it shouldn't be that way. I don't know.
Yeah, it should not be that way.
It's supposed to be a sport. It's supposed to be based on merit and ability. And you get big fights because of notoriety. And one of the ways you build notoriety is winning. One is, you can be a circus clown outside the cage, because that does sell. But
Jeez, man, I know there are bigger problems in the world right now, but I lost my electric razor in the Dominican, and this beard is not getting anywhere close to yours, so it's got to go right now.
Yeah, mine was getting too long, and I think I want to keep trimming it. But I don't know.
I
might not be able to get a haircut.
I'm just all neck, like one big.
I might not be able to get a haircut and stuff for a while. So,
well, good luck now.
Might have to shave it, or who knows? Might survival.
Learn to cut your own hair.
Throw it all out like a bear.
This is really a great opportunity for people to become to work on some hobbies, some skills, cut your own hair, do some yard work, like
hunt and cook some squirrels, squirrel soup.
I'm down for some squirrel soup.
All right. It's been about an hour. Shak, thanks so much for coming on and asking all my questions, answering tough questions. Hopefully you don't get fired.
Like I said, man, if I'm fully committed to this game, but if it doesn't work, there's other stuff I'm sure I'm good at.
No, and that's the absolute best mindset to have is, that's the idea of power, right? The power. If the power lies in the hand of the person who needs the other one less.
Yeah.
And if you have that mindset of like, oh, well, man, this might not work out, but I'm fine. I'll do something else. Like that, they have no power over you. You control the power of your life. You have the power in that relationship. Like they can't force you into doing anything.
Not to get too existential, because I know you just gave me an outro, but I sometimes wonder if part of the one track mind of fighters is that a lot of their friends are fighters, that they start dating other fighters, and it seems like their whole life is encompassed by fighting. I think one big thing that changed my perspective a lot about work at a pivotal stage in my life was getting into a long-term relationship and having some really good friendships with people who could not care less about the sport. And I think it's a constant reminder in my life that there are lots of other things going on and a lot of other things that can and often should take precedence over your job.
Yeah.
So while you guys are in self-isolation, please talk to people still.
Yeah.
Call, FaceTime, tweet, FaceTime, whatever. Just don't get in your own head for the next 6 months, 6 years, whatever this ends up being.
Yeah. Read a lot too. Read a lot. Read. Don't just scroll unless you're watching my shows and liking my Instagram photos. You could do that. But and listen to all of my podcasts twice.
This is a good chance to catch up on John Fitch's podcast.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's already even more. Yeah. I've got a channel on Rockfin now too. I'm gonna do a show on there with this girl that's been doing my social media, and we have the masculine feminine view on things. Should be pretty good.
I like it. Yeah, and this is actually a lot of what this sport needs is creative ideas. Like the media has been doing the same thing for so long.
Yep.
And if you're in MMA media and you're looking to break out, like do something fun, man. Like I've got animated series in the works right now, animated shorts and stuff. Like especially right now, there's not going to be any MMA news really for a while.
Yeah.
There's no event coverage. Like be creative. We need it. We really need it in this industry.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good time to get out there and be seen too if you got some good content.
For sure. Yeah, I picked a really economically challenging time to just buy a bunch of new computer parts, but I think there's an opportunity that'll present itself if I do. So we'll see.
All right, man. Well, have a good rest of your Thursday and stay safe. Keep free of the China virus. Did you see?
Is that your Trump impression?
Yeah,
It's a very bad Trump impression, but I got what you're saying.
The way he says China kills me every time. China
kind of sounds like a vagina.
Grab him by the China.
Oh man, Donald, what a character! What an interesting. We have two very different but equally absurd leaders in our country.
Oh yeah, Trudeau is something else.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Conspiracy theory of his dad is actually Fidel Castro.
I have, dude. I am so far. When you work online for 8 hours, the first thing you do is get off the internet as soon as you're done. So I am not clued into any of the conspiracy theory gossip.
That's an old one from the last election cycle. I thought it was hilarious.
I like it.
Put a bunch of photos of him side by side with Castro. And they're talking about how like his mother went down to Cuba around the time that she got pregnant.
He looks pretty.
So go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, I like you keep doing the outro, and then we keep finding more funny stuff to talk about. This is gonna go on forever. We should just do a podcast at this point.
All right. Have a good one. We'll check you guys later. Peace.